Welcome back into the shop. It's great to have you all here. Now, in this video, we're going to be cutting butt hinges. Now, if you prefer just to watch this in silence, like a lot of you do, I have a link in the description. You can go watch this video without any voiceover. I want to tell you, though, and explain to you my process because I'm using two different techniques here. I'm using hand tools and power tools, so it's cool to see the difference in how they work, and they actually intermesh and intertwine in how you do these two mortises. So the first thing we're going to do is lay everything out. The most critical part of anything is layout. I use two marking gauges. This first one I'm setting to the depth of my leaf. So basically I just go shy of the middle of the barrel of the hinge. And then the next marking gauge, I'm going to set the thickness of my leaf. And I'm going to keep these two marking gauges set and use them for all 6 mortises. There's 3 hinges in this lid, so I've got 6 mortises to cut. And that way I have everything repeatable and everything laid out exactly the same, super accurate. So you can see this marking gauge is marking off that kind of step back for that leaf, and then the next one is going to mark off the depth. And then we want to make one more mark with our marking knife, obviously on the kind of 90-degree perpendicular to that long run we just marked out. And this, we only want to do one side to start with. This is just a simple knife wall, and then once we cut out the mortise, we can come back and use the actual hinge leaf to mark the other side, and that's what gives you the accuracy. That's what gives you such a good fit. The key here, this is a really fun process. It takes a little bit of time, but once you get in the rhythm, it goes. But the key here is you're just cutting, basically like you're cutting a mortise, but you just want to stay at a consistent depth. So you'll, after you do 4 or 5 taps with the chisel, you'll kind of figure out how hard you need to hit and how many hits to get the exact same depth on each one of these cuts. And you just keep rolling through the process. Make sure you don't go too deep. Obviously, you don't want to go past your layout line, but you want to try to get right on the layout line so you don't have too much work clearing this waste after you're done chiseling. And I mean, it's watching this video footage, it's actually really cool seeing how this waste chips away. So now we'll come back into the hinge and hammer away this. I'm using the mallet right now, just hammering away this waste. You obviously have to be careful here not to go too hard with the chisel. You could hit that back edge and pop out, especially if you're on a thinner piece. If you had a 3/4 piece here, you'd have a real shallow little stop there, and you could break that out real easily. And basically what I do is I go right into my layout line. Once I kind of take some of that waste out, I'll put the chisel edge right into the layout line and I kind of angle up. That way I know I'm not cutting down, because you don't want to cut down into the mortise. If you angle up, you can come back and kind of clean that out without the mallet, just by hand, because you get more control when you take the mallet away. Make sure you got a pretty sharp chisel here. You don't want to be having to push real hard or force this to make these cuts. We always want to try to cut waste, not break waste. It's tempting here to want to pry it up and break that off, but you're always best cutting the fibers instead of breaking, because when you break it, it's unpredictable. You don't know what's going to happen. That's how mistakes happen. You end up chipping things off. Okay, so you can see I've left about a 1/16 there on that other shoulder, and I'm kind of working back pretty close to it, and then I'm going to put the hinge in. Actually, this is my original layout line. Let me correct that. I'm going straight to that mark and cutting that out. So I have a nice clean shoulder on that side, and then what we'll do is we'll put the hinge in, like I said earlier, and mark out the other side. So we set the hinge in, get it up against that wall, and then just take our knife and mark it using the other side of the leaf. It's the most accurate way to do this, and it's the beauty of hand tools and marking tools, because they're super accurate, and they beat a pencil any day. I'll sneak up to that knife wall, and no, it looks like I did it on the first cut. Must have been close from the get-go. The hardest part about doing this with a chisel is just keeping that bottom of that mortise flat and clean. You can use a router plane. If you don't know what that is, Google it. It's one of the coolest hand tools. In this particular case, I didn't use mine because I feel pretty confident with my chisel skills, but a router plane would dial it in really quite nicely. Okay, so we cut one by hand. If you want to speed the process up, grab yourself a little palm router. This is a 1/2 inch top bearing bit I've got in here. It cuts a 1/2 inch. It's a 1/2 inch diameter, 1/2 inch tall. So pretty small little bit. You know, I think it's specifically designed for hinge mortises on large doors and stuff like that. Basically, just lay it all out just like we did in the previous one and freehand out the waist. And here comes a realization that I've made a pretty big mistake. And so I'm going to show you how to fix it because I'm human. I make mistakes. You can see the leaf is on the wrong side of the board. So they're opposite of each other. It's completely useless that way. So we got to fix that, unfortunately. Working too quick here. I'm also working late at night in this video, so that's probably not helping either. So I'm going to take the palm router and clear out the rest of that waste. Just make a clean dado all the way across and chisel up my edges to get them nice and crisp and clean. And we're going to use the hinge just like before to mark off the length of that dado to get it exactly to the length of the leaf on the hinge. Make a knife wall and chisel out the rest of that waste. Okay, so with all cleaned up now, I need to make a filler piece because we got to glue something in there to correct this mistake. So I'll pull out my dovetail saw, get a little piece of scrap I had, and cut off a piece slightly bigger than the size of that hinge, the length of that hinge. And then we're going to take it to my shooting board with a little block plane and dial in the fit using the shooting board. That'll work. So I'm going to glue that on. I'm going to use a little caul or block to go over the top of it so I get good solid even pressure. And like I said, it's late at night, so this will give me a good point to go in and call it a night. Okay, next morning, glue's dry. First thing we got to do is flush this up, even hand plane it down. A little out of focus here, but you get the idea. Just pulled out the block plane and cleaned up that material to flush it all up. And we've got a little bit of waste to take out to get that leaf hinge to fit in there right, but at least we've got it on the right side now. So I'm going to go ahead and go back to my little palm router and clear out what waste I have. I've used the marking gauge to set my line so I know where to go to, and then we'll chisel out the rest. You want to be real careful chiseling here because obviously you're with the grain, not against the grain. And in this case, it's not a huge deal because I've got an 1.1 board here. But if you had a 3/4 board, which these hinges are designed to work on, you would have, a 1/16 or less, a 1/16 or 1/8 of material there, and you could split the door or whatever you're chiseling down on really easily. I've done it before. So anytime you're chiseling with the grain on that back side of that mortise, just take care not to go too aggressively. All right, let's give it a fit. See how it looks. And that worked out. And you can't see it too bad. It's pretty well hidden. The position of this piece too, no one's ever going to see it. So it didn't worry me at all. Next step. So I've got all the mortises cut in the frame, which is what this little lid's going to sit in. So now I've got my lid. I'm going to set it in the frame. You want to position it exactly how you want your reveals, your gaps all the way around on the sides. And then we can transfer over our mortises to the lid. This is some beautiful pecan, by the way. This is Texas pecan I'm working in. It actually came from their property, so it's kind of a cool story for them. But yeah, it's some real pretty wood. So like you can see, I'm using my marking knife, transferring over one wall of that mortise and marking an X to know where my waist is, because it's very easy here to go on the wrong side of your marking knife line and cut it on the wrong side, which would be a bad mistake. Do that to all three, and then we're going to mortise these out. I think I'm going to show you doing one of them, because the other one was kind of a bust. So I made a mistake on it, so we're going to go through and do one more on the lid, even though there's 3 on there. Before I get started, I need to hand plane. I'm going to use a hand plane. I would encourage anyone. Look, throwing out a yawn there. So it's pretty early in the morning here. Obviously, it's still dark. I guess I got up early for this. I look tired. Okay, anyway, back on the subject. So I'm going to hand plane this edge. I encourage people to use a hand plane, smoothing plane. Don't bust out an orbital to do this. You get a much cleaner, crisp edge, more enjoyable, and it's actually much quicker in my opinion. And the reason we're cleaning it up is because it's right off the table saw, so you can see the saw marks from the saw blade. I want a nice smooth surface there, even though it's probably never going to be seen. I still can't handle seeing the saw marks. Oh yeah, definitely tired. Okay, so I find my little knife mark I made, put my knife in it, and transfer my line. Kind of looks like I'm slicing my finger there, but definitely not. And since I have my X there, I know exactly where the mortise is going. I'm not going to put it on the wrong side of my line. And now we're just going to go through the process of laying them out using the marking gauges still set to the exact same setting from the frame. Lay it all out, and then we'll take the palm router to it to get the waist out. When I cut mortises for anything in furniture making, door making, I always use this little palm router. I always cut them this way. I don't typically do it by hand, but if you don't have power tools, or if you don't want to use power tools, the first method with the chisel is very enjoyable. It just takes a little longer. The key to remember here is working to every finished edge, we're working towards a layout, a marking line, a layout line that's been cut into the fibers of the wood. So obviously our marking knife laid out the back one, not a marking knife, our marking gauge laid out the back one, and our marking knife laid out the 2 side edges. So everything you're doing hand tool wise, you're working towards some kind of cut or marking line in the wood. Now here's a tricky part, drilling out. This is a 3/32 drill bit. You want to be really careful with these little hinges screws. They're little brass screws. You want to wax them, get some lubricant on them. I use my power drill to drill these in, but I set the setting very low, and I go really easy on it, because if you over crank these, you will break them off. And this is actually not the finished screw. That's just a regular zinc screw that I use to thread the hole, and then I go back and put the brass ones in afterwards. Okay, so once I get all the hinges in place on the door, I'm going to transfer it over and hang it on the frame. So I'll set the frame on my bench and then position the lid in a way that I can just set it on that frame and hang the leaves down. I'll put a little shim up underneath the door to level it out with the frame so everything's sitting nice and level. And then this is actually the fun part, where you get to see if all the leaves fit into the respective mortises. And if you lay everything out correctly, shouldn't be an issue at all. Sometimes they're slightly off, and if they're close enough, you can loosen the screws and kind of work them into the mortise and get them to work. If they're too far off, then you've got to adjust your mortises with a chisel, and you'll have a loose fitting leaf, which, you know, it happens. It's not an end of the world, but ideally you want them all fitting in there tight, because that's what gives butt hinges such great strength, is the fact that they're locked into a mortise. And these are good solid hinges. They come from Horton brasses, and they should hold up for a long time. Shouldn't have any issues. Like I said, they send you these screws that you can thread the holes with, which is really nice, because the brass ones are even softer, easier to break. So when I go to install this, I will replace these all with brass ones, and they'll be pre-threaded. They'll slide in real easy. You could use a screwdriver by hand and put them in no problem. The worst thing you can do here is break a screw off in that hinge. It's a nightmare and a mess to clean up. So here you can kind of see how it works. That basically will become a bench seat in front of a window, and I'm going to show you here in a second actually the finished product. And you'll see the reveal here. I made a slight adjustment. It's a little bit tighter in that corner, which annoyed me, so I took a little bit off with the hand plane. Other than that, though, the reveal was really nice and even all the way around, and I was very pleased with how this came out. And you'll notice how nice this looks finished. This pecan really pops, as you'll see it right here. So you see here, that's the finished product. You've got cabinet storage down here where you open it, and then you close it down. It's your bench seat right in front of a window. Looks really cool. This whole cabinet surround, I spent probably over a month building. Really cool, fun project, and I would have liked to have filmed the whole thing, but it was a big project, and I wanted to get through it, so I didn't. So I thought I'd show you guys how I did the butt hinges. I think there's a lot to learn there. That's my method. Basically a combination of hand tools and power tools. It works really well. Hope you enjoyed the video. Leave me a comment if you have any questions. Let me know what you think, and we'll see you next time.